Ladies and gentlemen, this woman that you're looking at, she lost her car through what's called a civilian asset forfeiture. In other words, it's a legalized stealing of a civilian's property by the government. And in many cases, this was heavily done on Black people. You know, if you remember when Jeff Sessions took office as Attorney General, he said he was going to bring this back. And he was smirking and smiling, and we know what he meant. He meant he was going to bring this back so these cops could be out here stealing our cars, our homes, our bank accounts, and anything they wanted. And they often heavily did this on Black um, citizens only. Not too many white people this happened to, not unless they were into organized crime and stuff like that. If they weren't into that, they really didn't bother white citizens with this. So her son had her car and he was accused of dealing drugs. So because he had her car, they seized the car. And she has been fighting to get the car back, and she now is finally getting the car back 5 years later, getting an opportunity to get it back 5 years later. See, me, I think it was more about the kind of car it was. That's why it was seized. And see, a lot of times they'll seize these cars, and these cops will be out there driving around and enjoying your car and anything else they've stolen from the citizens through this civilian asset forfeiture, legalized stealing from the government. So this woman's name is Melinda Harris, and the story came out on Reason March 2nd, 2021. So Harris, nothing more, she knew nothing really about this civilian asset forfeiture until October 2020. And it was more than 5 years after her car, which was an Infiniti G37 2011, was stolen by the local police. And she had filed a complaint and they took 5 years after she filed the complaint of even giving her an opportunity to get the car back. In a state court motion filed last week, Harris argues that it was unconscionable delay in giving her a chance to recover her car was a due process violation by itself, justifies its immediate return. The Massachusetts invites such abuse, she said, because it was civilian forfeiture law. It does not provide a deadline by which the Commonwealth is required to initiate forfeiture proceedings. The Phoenix-based Goldwater Institute, which represents Harris, cites several other constitutionally questionable aspects of the state's law, which epitomizes everything that is wrong with the practice of confiscating property by alleging that it's connected to a crime. Even when the owner has done nothing illegal, which is in her case. She didn't do nothing illegal. So why would you take her car? She didn't do anything. So according to the Institute for Justice, Massachusetts has the worst civilian asset forfeiture laws in the country. Massachusetts is the only state to earn an F in its latest edition of the organization Policing for Profit report. It is not hard to see why. In most states, police in Massachusetts can seize property when they have probable cause. So they don't even have to say. So in other words, ladies and gentlemen, they can come to your house and make an accusation. And there's no, they can just hurl an act. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, we saw you stealing in a supermarket. They can just make the accusation, and that accusation is good enough for them to seize your home. I mean, this is government sanctioned theft. That's what it really is. So all they have to have is probable cause and to believe it was used for, like, they can come and knock on your door and said, there's drug trafficking going on in your home, and you may not be involved in any kind of activity like that. Just the accusation alone, now they can seize your home and take it from you. And this is Massachusetts, right? So they can believe it was used for drug trafficking, but once they have met the minimal threshold, the burden of proof shifts to the owner, who must show the property is not subject to forfeiture. In this case, the government has offered no evidence that Harris' son, who left town after the seizure and was murdered 3 years later, used her car for drug dealing. So the cop made the accusation that her son was drug dealing from the car, but there was no evidence of her son doing this. So the cop literally made the whole thing up. And just from what he made up, she lost her car. And her son was killed 3 years later. Wow. This poor woman. Okay. So Massachusetts allows innocent owners to seek the return of their assets unless they knew or should have known that such conveyance or real property was used in or for business of unlawful manufacturing, dispensing, and distributing controlled substances, which none of that was going on. So the cop just straight up lied about it. I think it was the fact that it was an expensive car and he saw a black man driving it, her son. I think that's what the whole thing was about. And the cop just decided to make up some crime that never happened. But it requires owners to prove their innocence, the reverse of the presumption that applies in criminal cases. Silverman said the rule violates due process. And since the government kept Harris' property, even though she has no culpability at all, he argues the state's legalized larceny also violates the Eighth Amendment excessive fines clause. Punishment must be proportional to the property owner's wrongdoing, he says. In the case of an innocent owner, any punishment would be disproportionate. Even an attempt to recover seized property requires hiring a lawyer, and that's in Massachusetts. You shouldn't have to do all of this. The cop was in the wrong. You should have just gave her damn car back, which cost thousands of dollars. A bill that is in this case easily could have exceeded the market of Harris's car. Since the Goldwater Institute is representing her for free, she does not have to worry about the obstacle. But most forfeiture victims are not so lucky. Since the value of seized property is typically less than the cost of trying to get it back, it usually makes sense just to give it up. No, it don't. You get your stuff back. Even when Massachusetts property owner can afford a lawyer, he cannot do anything until the government notifies him that it is proceeding with the forfeiture, which is this case happened 68 months after the seizure. Now remember, she and her son are innocent and they took this car. The Commonwealth has offered no justification for why it took almost 5 years to file this suit or another 10 months to serve it, Silverman said. This lengthy, unexplained delay deprived Harris of due process and requires that the complaint be dismissed. And they need to give her money. They need to give this woman money. She really needs to also sue for the fact that her son never committed a crime and they seized, she's working on the car part, but she really need to get them, especially that cop that lied about drug dealing from her car when that never happened. That cop she need to sue the cop and that whole police department over that. They put a fake charge on her son. But y'all, please tell me what you think. This is just horrible. Mm-mm-mm. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.